Yep.
The public thing. I have a commercial, so I'm assuming. Does it launch me before I can see that I'm launched because there are commercials?
Probably.
See, this is the Disney Plus is starting new cartoons, though. Hello, kind and gentle folk. How are we doing tonight? If anyone can reach out and yell and give me a heads up from each of the channels to make sure we're streaming. It says that we are, but it also says there are no viewers here, and it says there are 34 viewers here. I don't know. Do not have answers for these. So another night of critiques. I don't know if we're going until 2 o'clock today. I feel beat up. My sinuses are killing me. My sinuses are abusing me. Okay, so I see Twitches. Are we live on YouTube and?
We are live on YouTube.
Facebook? Oh, well, we'll find out. It says we are.
Page is loading on my end, so we'll find out in a second.
Oh, it says I'm Shane today. Well, hello, Chris. I'm not Shane. I could never get my name right there. Is that something you can change?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Woo. Okay, so today we're going to do some critiquing and then do something else if we run out of critiquing. But I'm up. Sort of. That's saying I'm up. Okay, so this is Blend Man. It's a very interesting noise texture. Trying to make it look like Batsuit. Good. I would say that looks good. Suit. Your arms going in the direction. Your biceps are under your pecs. Ooh, you go, boy. That's a big one. And with color, it's looking good. I think I would try to resolve how these two intersect a little differently, just so they don't overlap, either make them look like one piece or have it do something that's, let's say, complementary. Either move it back so they're not touching, but even if they aren't, here. And I would try to do something either touching this and or being complementary to it. Where these lines sort of that mirrors that line, something, you know, just so they don't randomly go over one another, but where they have some reason either to intersect or just not to intersect. Since you don't want them to look like they're just accidentally over. So think about, we don't have Right, you want this to be a complementary form somehow or another. I don't think connecting them is definitely the answer, but just have, like, maybe have the referential to that swoop, and then that space can be removed, but it'll still feel like it's sort of connected. I think I might run that. And then I would probably take this curve and kind of curve that curve. And then at least your forms are sort of relating to in a solid design. If that makes any sense. Yeah, I would just make this overall shape work together from the side. Because your anatomy's good, you're doing well. I mean, it's all good. Right? The texture's interesting. The anatomy's okay. I mean, everything's in the right place. So I think for a start, that's pretty darn good. I think that might also be a little low. Because if you think of where his face is, that would put his eyes almost right on those seams. So I'd probably move the bat up to be sort of covering the eyes. Because otherwise these seams right here like dead center the eye. I'd probably get it up farther on the face. Make it where that's the visor or whatever that you're looking through. Then because of that move, either that can come back around and interact with the ear again, or make it that so you're doing the same thing here. There. But work on this interaction shape. And I would say move the eyes up a little. So you're not looking through a seam, right? It's not over the eye, or it's completely over the eye. But not really the twain shall meet. That is the question of the hour, Chris. One that I've been pondering for quite a while. All right, so yeah. Other than that, I think you're off to a good start. When you get there, if there are any questions, we can come back to you. All right, Mikko. You ready? Are you in chat? Nice remesh.
Hello.
Hello. I like what you did.
Thank you.
Yeah. I might have this just come out and go there instead of cutting off, just so you have a nice transition to that point.
Mm-hmm.
Because you did it here, right? That transition makes sense. I like using the texture to break it up. Because you're using that, it's not coming off. I might think of, maybe putting a line here. And this isn't a well thought out. Told me to. Because you have the things coming. Maybe use it there. I mean, it's a point, that on, off sort of rhythm. Because you have it over here, you have it over here. I'd at least find some place for it. Maybe here, just someplace over here for it. Just so it seems like a cohesive pattern. Right. A little there, a little there. A little there, a little there, a little triangle. I mean, this could just be this ridge. Just trying to find another place for that to be. Yeah, something like
Mm-hmm.
But you see how that at least makes it look like it's a cohesive part of the finger, right? It's here and here, but you sort of have something going on in there. It's a similar pattern to the tongue here. But from the front, right, you have this one thing here that at least balances it off some. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not completely sold on it, so that's a here or there kind of. The tongue's nice. You got your repeating these spots. Good over under. You might want to find. Ooh. You may want to find a place for this to go. Right, because you have this line coming in and through. Either run it up a little bit farther or have it terminate somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't want to start, a theme and not do anything. Because the first thing when I see that, where'd it go? Once again, don't know if that is the solution. But good. Your hole is 90 at that point. Yeah, no, I think you approached the issues that were presented to you.
Yes, I was happy to do this.
maybe tune that up. This looks a little bit more curved. He had like a, yeah, that's just slightly more consistent curve there. It doesn't get flat, it's always moving.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple little taps. Keep it from getting flat. And when you have these big, nice, big swooping curves, flat. Yeah. So because here you do it, you know, it's not good. No, no, I like it. So what do you think? You like where you went with it?
The feedback was very useful and very cool.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask your advice about the size of this piece, because now it's about 60 mil height, and the size of the hole is about 7 mil, and I'm not sure that this is small enough to wear it comfortably.
Well, I'd say that's probably really heavy at 60 mil. I would have thought that it would have been like in the 30, 35 mil range, something like that. More like a slightly bigger charm, right, than a full blown out pendant. Because that being that thick, you know what I mean? If that's a 7 mil hole, that's like almost a centimeter thick there at the thumb, you know. So I would have thought, like in my head, I see that piece being about that big. You know, what, 35?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that becomes like a 4 millimeter hole, and that becomes a much more wearable thing, I think.
Yes, thank you. I will try to get a print with help from my
Yeah,
friend.
I just think that's going to be something you can throw through a car window if that's 60 mil. You know what I mean? That's a
Yes,
chunky piece of metal.
yes, it's my concern.
About surgery over here? I turned my back and I hear surgery. All right. Very cool. No, I think it looks good. I would
Cool.
Go ahead.
Cool. So I will update that curves and add texturing, and that's it.
Yeah, just make sure you resolve all the shapes that you start, you know, like this thing in here. You know, you can have it just come up here and disappear in that line as well. And yeah, you know, just make sure that your curves are nice and curvy. You know, don't let them itch or, you know, get weird. Because anytime that curve stops and changes and stops, it becomes something that your eye is drawn to at that point, right? You're like, oh, well, why'd that curve break? So when you're doing nice flowy curves, try to make them nice and flowy.
So that one is also the problem. I tried to create this style to get that is popping from inside of the hand on the side.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. It just make sure they're consistent, whatever you're doing. You know, if you're breaking it up and flipping around and blah 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 blah. Just keep getting these very odd things out of the corner. It's like I didn't smell anything. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? No, at this point, Juan, this is a solid piece. That's why I said 35 mil is probably going to be a better call than 60, because 60 mil, that's going to be a lot of weight, isn't it? No. Escape. Sliders up to 60. Resize sub to that one's 60. Yeah. Even in silver, that's 53.5 grams of silver.
Yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. You could throw that through a car window without a doubt. Yeah. Yeah, I think you could probably cut that in half. Just go down to like 30.
Got it.
Yeah. Right on, right on. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you very much.
Of course, my
I'll
friend.
be happy to send something else next time.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. Okay.
So before you move on to the next one,
No.
a person who is in their second year of university doing game design, they're just wondering what it's like to get into ZBrush as a beginner.
Well, as an educator of ZBrush, I would say if you're just doing it alone with no guidance, you'll probably slam your head against the wall a little bit, because the interface can be very confusing just because they kept everything, right? So stuff that's really good for design, stuff that's really good for videos, stuff that's really good for manufacturing, it's all there, and it's not really set up as separate interfaces. And that's why a lot of us have custom, like this is a custom interface, because I've pulled all the stuff that's good for manufacturing, because I print and manufacture jewelry and small art and art objects. So, I would say that trying to get some, even if it's just the basic help at the beginning and going through the ZBrush stuff that's free on Pixologic and getting used to the interface, I think that's the number one thing that most people have problems with, is getting confused by the interface and then kind of quitting. Honestly, it's not hard. If you've ever used sculpting tools or been a sculptor, it's very, very intuitive once you get around the interface and like things how to navigate. But like for navigation, I use a space mouse, and they're absolutely awesome. I haven't been using my space mouse because since I moved here, I lost I got a new computer, and in doing so, I lost my profiles for my 3D space mouse, so I haven't been using it much because I've been really busy and I haven't had time just to do it and then get back into used to using. But great tool, space mouse, 2 thumbs up. I just think that you have to approach it. If you're approaching it as a new thing and you're not carrying over your CAD expectations, I think you'll do a lot better as well. But there is absolutely nothing out there that beats it as far as an organic modeling program. I get a Blender this, Blender that, Blender this. Yeah, Blender's great. Blender's free. But Blender is by no means a full package like this. They're completely different. Also, once you get used to it, it's just extremely fast to whip up quick ideas, look at them, change them. It's nice. It still says Shane Olsen. Not anymore.
You can't change it on YouTube.
Oh.
I can change it on Twitch, but I can't change it on YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube. Sorry. No, Shane's a lot nicer than I am. Shane's super nice. Yeah, it happened. But I love Shane, so I won't say anything. I won't do anything that would embarrass Shane, hopefully.
Ready to move on?
Hold on, I'm looking at his. Can Shane do mittens? Yeah, actually, he's really good at mittens, actually. Yeah, Jay, I think that, but you have to be careful. Be very careful about which videos you do use and make sure they're relevant to what you need, because you can get some really bad information if you're trying to do, like, I get a lot of people who watch videos that are about game design and are about film stuff, and they try to talk to me about geometry, and it's worthless information for manufacturing. You need completely different concepts of what and how to use geometry for manufacturing as opposed to using it as game assets and things like that. So just be careful to find someone who is doing what you're doing and then watching it, right? Because if you watch me, I can, like, now for the most part, I've been streaming critique, so yeah, this can be helpful in a design concept. But like when I stream, I'm usually streaming about manufacturing techniques, and when I start talking about how I use geometry and stuff, some of that could be very erroneous for game manufacturing, like that. So find people who do exactly what you want to do and look at those videos. I think that's probably your best idea. Surround yourself with the people who are doing what you want to do, and that'll be helpful. All right, who's next?
Let's move on to Jeff, the goblin.
It's goblin? Or the smoking goblin? Not a goblin. Jefferson?
Oh.
Hello, hello. All righty. Is this the one we're dealing with?
Yes.
All right. Well, I appreciate that you actually built the box. Look, it's actually slat. I approve. So actually, I'm quite fond of your box. Good box.
Oh, thank you.
All right, so now let's hide the box and look at what we got going on here. So I think that, your anatomy is pretty tight, actually. It's kind of interesting. I think that this might move in just a little bit more. Right, it wouldn't stop just in that line. You get a little bit more of a fold over there, which gives you a little bit more of a medium.
Yeah, that part's always tricky.
It's
Like
always
I
tricky.
even like I felt it on my own arm. I'm a skinny guy, so like um so I get my shoulders are quite similar to his. Not as beefy, but so I try to get a good feel of it, and even then
Yeah,
I can't
no,
quite figure out how to.
I just think, let's go back to the beginning. I just think that, come on, get rid of our paint. See how it just flattens off right here? I just think that that would have a little bit more beef because you're pinching it, right? If it's being pinched in, I don't think it's going to go flat. And then these
Right.
two things do actually intersect, right? So even if you don't puff it out too much more, you really want to retain that, super thin thing. You're still going to get a little bit of a neat pinch there where those two things are hitting. And then, your clavicle would shift just a little higher. If this arm's down, this arm's up, clavicle's going to shift up and under. this stuff looks great. Stuff's really nice. The hands, the anatomy and the hands and a lot of fun. They're really neat. How you've stretched it out. And it still ties into an anatomical story, which I think works. His face is fun. Our smoke's a little... The thing about the smoke is this. The smoke out of the pipe's wonderful, right? I think it really feels like it's up and wispy. The thing that you're running into with the smoke in the face is that I think that it's covering the eye here. You have this thing that looks like a ball from this view, so it just almost looks like a snot bubble or something. So I think with the smoke, you probably just want to compose it a little bit better so it's not blocking parts of the face from the angle. And now if the angle is that, okay, well now that's different, but you still get these two things that are sort of
he's more from a profile view. That's how I'm gonna that's gonna be the final
here.
presentation for him. So from the side, yeah, from there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Still say, because these seem to be forceful exhalations, you know what I mean? And then these seem to be draping, like this is a slow exhale. And then this would be a slightly more forceful exhale. So I think that these two spouts are just telling a different story than these, if that makes any sense. This kind of exhaling looks like it would be coming out, and then, your smoke would be coming out from there. If that makes sense. Like they have force coming out. Where when you let smoke just breathe out of your mouth or nose, it gets lofty, and that's when you get these kind of cool shit. I used to take a lot of pictures of my friends exhaling smoke. I had thousands of pictures of smoke. And so this is something I have some experience with. And,
I don't deny it.
and I would say that you probably just want a little bit more sort of laziness in these curves, just a touch, if they're going to be, kind of floaty and filtery, where, they're just a little bit more wavy, so they feel like there's time in them. Does that make sense? Where it's not stretched tight, it's allowed to come out and kind of float. And I'm
So
sure,
like add a bit more gravity.
Yeah, I would look at. I guarantee you, YouTube, there are thousands of pictures of just do slow exhale, smoke slow exhale, and I assure you there are lots of pictures of people just doing slow exhales, and you'll see what I mean. They just have a little bit more time to get there. Where if you're exhaling with force at the area where you're exhaling from, I mean, because even just think about cartoons, right? When you see like in a comic book or something like that, if it's a forceful exhale, you're going to get lines like this, and then you're going to get the billowing down here, right?
Yeah.
And then if not, it's a nice slow, has weight, and it has time to get where it's going. And it's slightly more lofty, weighty, sort of billowous exhale. But they're close. You know what I mean? It's not like, I think this is really nice. This is lazy. It has a lot of weight in it. It's moving around. I think even just, taking this one even. It's my 0.05. Even if this one just has a little bit more weight, where it's just not right? Just by putting that slow curve in there, see how it doesn't look like it's tight. It doesn't look like there's force behind it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just how you get them to disperse is really. You know, that tension in it makes it feel like, you know, it's like a little bit more forceful, a little bit more of an. But other than that, those are cool. I like your anatomy because the reverse belly curl there, good. Goblin.
Yeah. So far, my biggest challenge with him are those forearms, since he has very skinny forearms. Like
Oh,
so
I
far,
think they're.
what's
I like them. I think they're, like I said, they feel very stylized. You know what I mean? And there's a little bit of waver to them. You know, in this forearm, this one's pretty tight. You know, the only thing, I mean, like, if you're really, really getting picky about it per se, I think that what you're going to have is you have, unlike this, it's sort of the opposite problem you have as the smoke, right? Because the smoke from point A to point B is this loose flow. Even if it's skinny, you know, the anatomy, you still have an insertion here, an origin here, and especially bent over your forearm, these lines would be a little straighter and, you know, curving around. But, you know, honestly, I don't, you know, if you just straighten that one line right there, and that sort of becomes a tension point.
like so far what's there? It's some anatomy that I try to put in, but they got kind of warped like that when I
You,
post them.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So if you just straighten those lines up just a little bit, and I mean, it's not a lot, obviously, you know, it's just getting the S curves out of them. So these are just a little bit,
Yeah.
you know.
I have I have a neutral version of him that's a bit more updated than this. It's in the other folder in the
Yeah.
subtool palette. Like that one I went in more to to define that arm anatomy. Though there is like a mark there that I just left as a space for like some missing muscles that I
Mm-hmm.
was gonna fill in later.
Yeah, see, I really like the muscle style you have going on. And that's what I'm saying. Like here, I think that you're actually not as far away as I think you feel like you are. It's just, you just have to think about, you know, think about putting a tag on it. So, like, go back to this guy. And so when you do this, like before you pose him, you can come in here and do something like where you know that that and that are the points of that connector. That's the point of that connector right in there. You know, this is the insertion. That's the tension point. And just do some little dot points. And why that can be helpful is when you do come around after you're posing, you'll know that, come on. You know, you'll know that this muscle was attaching here, right? So if that muscle also attaches there, and that's going to there, we'll see how you have this weight issue, right? It comes up here and then down. Well, it's not going to do that. It's going to, come on. Those. You know, it's going to be a nice even curve under tension, right? That's not going to wobble, right? So this is connecting up here and here, coming, connecting down and up under here. You're splitting. It's there, coming there. And so you just need to figure out where those insertions and origins are, and then make sure that there's tension in between the 2 points of connection, right? And see how this
Right.
sort of drips in some. Well, it's not going to really change, like, muscles are pretty straight actually, right? So if you
Yeah.
just make this a nice curve under tension, then from this direction, say that pushes it some. So from this angle, it looks like it's under tension. This angle, it looks like right, and see how now that looks like it's not waving around. There's not that S curviness. It's attached here and it's attached there. And so I think that that's the only issue is when you posed it, you just lost some of the tension in the muscles. So you've lost the concept of where they're inserting and where their origins are. And that's what's giving you that wonkiness in it.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think that I don't think the anatomy's bad. I think it's just coming in and figuring out where the meat's pinching, where the tension of it is. And see how that feels already just a little bit more like those muscles are up and rolling over. But the curve in them is coming from the twist in the not lumps, if that makes
The curve is coming from the twist of the arm.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. You find 2 points of that insertion and origin, and then just keep them fairly straight. They'll bulk where they bulk. But you're getting that twist from them shifting over the. And see how that feels like it's a little bit more tense than floppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's just going back, figuring out where, like I said, your insertions and origins are, and then just making those straight lines. Because very rarely do you get muscle wobble, where it's not, there is an origin, there is an insertion, and, you're getting that anatomy from its twisting. It's not, even when it's flaccid, it's still hanging between those 2 points. So, yeah. But, I mean, the stylization I like quite a bit. But yeah, if you're wanting to tune that, definitely make sure that you get those that tension in, because you could even really, and then sort of tensioning in. because muscles are sort of like lives, you know. They don't just go down to one point. It kind of comes in and then kind of spreads at the bottom. And that way, tensions. Right.
Right.
No, but he looks great. I would do something with his expression as well. I mean, I don't know how far you are on it and stuff, but like if we
Like I just got to the point where I was posing him. I
Yeah.
haven't done much on his facial expression. Like in the neutral, in the version of his model that's in neutral, like I tweaked his face a little bit more, but the mainly where the eyelids are.
Mhm.
But other than that, I haven't gone around to his facial expression yet.
Yeah, I would definitely. You know, where his face isn't. Give him a little. All in all, he's great. I love the hand distortion. Stuff is. I'd say you're real damn close. Yeah, it's just a little bit more. Like I said, just figuring out those. Figure out where the insertion and origin is, and let it naturally get there. You know.
Right. Cool. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Thomas.
Of course. Yeah, no, he looks great. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to finish him up and render him.
Yeah, I can't wait.
It's
Either.
definitely gonna be. But yeah, it's actually I have one other question.
Sure.
The question being about his like the back of the deltoids where they meet the scapula.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for that?
Like just this intersection right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to what goes over what. You know, here, let's open that. Because it does just sort of. Okay. Internet. Basically, instead of these just meeting flat, It's just a simple. Because nothing's ever butting together. Makes sense?
Yeah.
So instead of having butt together, pinches into one somehow.
Cool. Thanks again for the critique, Thomas.
Of course, anytime.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Till next time.
Whoop whoop. Can't wait to see it next. All right.
Ready for the next one?
That would. Do we have a name on this person? This person.
Unreal. Unreal Arms, maybe? What the A is it for?
Okay. Unreal.
And I don't know if they're here.
Hello, hello. Right, because they're actually connected. Go to up in here. So they do go stuff. That little return back just makes them. You don't want that to return, kind of come up. It coming from fantasy and your abs. I like that your deltoids over the pecs. Often people make huge pecs or huge deltoids, but the pecs go up all the way here and they kind of shear off at the front. So I like that you have this huge deltoid thing. I mean, your foundational anatomy is very nice. A lot of people this shape. Especially being this blown out. I would think that, yeah, it's hard to say what you're going to be doing with, because, I mean, you obviously have some of this under here, which, is tied to the smaller head. I would say so far in your block out, everything looks really darn good. And you have a good concept of anatomy. your balance is a little forward, sort of, probably. Probably. It's going to be skew everybody. Sure. Now. You know, just get him where your center of mass is a little bit more center of mass right now. But yeah, no, I think your block up's getting to be dead on. You know, from this point, it's a little bit hard to, if you think about your center of gravity, you can see you're a little off. He's leaning a little forward. And if you're saying, oh, well, he's hunched over, well, then get his butt back and get him over. You know, you can be hunched over and still have your center of gravity be fairly center. So just make sure he's not tipping. All right. Yeah, indeed. Are you all having problems hearing me? I guess when I sit back here, when I lean back, you might have some trouble hearing me. But are we having problems hearing me? Okay.
No, only one person said anything, so I'm forced to assume it's on their end.
Just making sure. Well, I do know that, you know, sometimes I lean back. So. All right, I don't know. You know, you're still in block up. But, you know, just get your center of gravity a little bit more on center. And, yeah, other than that, you know, get your armpit, your biceps to actually be going up under that deltoid, not just coming straight down from it. It looks, oh, really good. I can't wait to see it move forward. What size gauges are they? Big enough for me to jam my pinky in. At this point, I have no idea. And they give me litter box privileges because everyone thinks I sound like the cat coming down. They're really my ninja powers because everyone's like, oh, we can hear you coming. And all I have to do is this and sneak down the hall, and then no one knows I'm coming because they're so used to hearing me with my cat bell on. And they allow you to keep rhythm. Otherwise, it turns into a cacophonous breakbeat that just, it's hard to keep rhythm to. Alrighty. So where do we stand? Did anyone else upload?
Yep, Jin, who is in chat. Tomas, your favorite question: is it possible to measure millimeters in ZBrush?
Yeah. It's very easy to measure millimeters, and ZBrush has a very accurate measuring system. Download the one second. Millimeter. Are there two figures in? Assuming this is your well, you can see you're combining his head with her body. Yeah, the Hello Kitty sneak powers is really important because you got to lull everyone into believing that you make a lot of noise all the time. Well, I would say obviously we need to, because right now you just have your base shapes going. I'd say that you obviously need to anatomize her up because she has a kicking body, right? I mean, she's very muscular. So I think that's your first effort is to get in here and get the anatomy up and running. You know, it's a really overly dramatic pose. See, this is things that illustrators get away with all the time. That if you do this as a sculptor, people are like, because really, if you look at her torso, her rib cage is sitting almost backwards, right? Because like this is the edge of the rib cage right here. It ends. So her rib cage is sort of like a funnel that goes almost backward. And then her deltoid, her pec, her bicep is coming out of her deltoid. And then her chin's behind all this. So where's her neck? So these are poses that illustrators can get away with that we can't. Because if you make a sculpture that looks like this, people are going to be like, what is wrong with you? So yeah, you're going to have to take this as inspiration. Because I mean, look at look at how the pec muscle rolls. Okay, so a breast is soft tissue, right? It's not hard. It's not a muscle. So this muscle is rolling over the whole chest cavity to come down into the armpit. But the deltoid is up here in the shoulder. And then, you know, she has very gravity-defying breasts that are not affected by the pec muscle rolling down and under tension. This is why I'm very jealous about graphic artists. They can do things like this and get away with it. Where if you do this, I'm going to say you're silly. Right, so I would get my anatomy in, and then I would definitely rethink that torso position. But I mean, you can get it, sort of into place, but let's and again, 8 head height female. Man, I hate. That's the one thing that makes me frustrated. No. Oh, you did it anyway. You Con. I hate that these are not ZTLs, they're ZPRs. That's annoying. Right, but I mean, let's just import this. I think this is something you should look at. I hate when I do that. I know, right? They should just be I gotta save them as ZTLs, not ZPR. But here, let's turn our floor on. And then we're going to go. And look, it gave me this dumb horizon. I don't like other people's projects. I like my project. We're going to go draw. We're going to go to front. We're going to map one. We import. We're going to go to download. We're going to come here. We'll get her. All right. So here she is. It's Miss America. And perspective. Who the hell turns perspective on? Stop. See, here we go. I don't know how to move the whole body. You're not going to allow me to do it? You'll let me do it here, but you're just not going to let me grab that. Hmm. See, every time when I make my own mannequins, everything works fine. And then the second I try to use the mannequin, right, like her, if you look at her torso, right, this is back over here. Rotating there, all the way up here. Here. Here, this is up here. Her chin's right. That doesn't. Absurdity. Illustrator. Right? That makes no sense at all, does it? That's not very super. See a problem with this? I disapprove. I'm just going to say, if you bring this to me in this pose, know you're going to get yelled at. Those wacky kids. Yeah, so I think that, get your anatomy sorted out and then, work on your pose. Because she does have a robust, there's a lot of anatomical definition. But watch out for that pose. Oh yeah, no, I know. I like the mannequins and things like this because it's funny. I mean, you can tell that I don't use them very often because I couldn't figure out how to move it. But I don't know. Every once in a while, I still use mannequins only because you can get the mannequin to retain its right. When you're moving. When you're moving it, you can get it to where, it's not going to break the parameter of the length of the joint. So if you're, let's say you're trying to match that elbow, right? You know that either it's going here or it has to come back more to make that the forearm shorter or the upper arm shorter. So I do think that mannequins can be useful if you're having a hard time. Like if all of a sudden your character comes out with little T-Rex arms because it's actually, at this angle, so it only looks like this part of the arm is very, very short. Well, I think that for people who have foreshortening challenges, I think using mannequins is super helpful. But yeah, I don't use mannequins much at all. But in cases like this, they're really funny. Especially if I could get it to actually... I don't remember how to move it as a whole. I don't remember. I'm uninformed. Yeah, you're at a block up stage. So there's not too much really to talk about. I mean, I do see how you took the head off the other one and brought it onto this body. The head's looking good. I mean, you're getting it in there and the proportions are not. So what hand? You mean the illustrations hand? Big and pointy and illustrate. Just, I love the rib cage that's facing us. Like her ribs look like a football. When you're working with illustrators and trying to make toys out of illustrations and things like that, I run into this all the time. All the time. And you're like, well, you can't really pose it that way. Of course we can. I'm like, no, you can draw it that way, but dimensionally it's going to look really weird. No, and then you sculpt it for them, and then like, oh well, no, here we need to change this, and then you go, okay, I'm going to start charging you for revisions because I told you that. What's that? She doesn't have one. Well, I guess it could just be a rod that goes up to this T that little pancake football, which are rib cage. I know. Illustrators are wacky. I'm already yawning. We're in trouble.
Bro.
Yeah? Are you making fun of me because I'm yawning?
No. Just said row.
Oh, all I got was the row. I was like, bro? Bro what? Oh.
So we have those pictures
Oh, I
from
forgot about
Daniel.
that. Cowboy butt. Oh, beating on you. If you're going to make these like little cyberpunk or android cyborgy forms that end in the little dot things, I would make sure that those lines are, and you can sort of see them here on the list too. Make sure those lines are clear and sharp, because if they're like this, they sort of look like scars instead of that cybernetic sort of split. I do find it interesting. She has a cybernetic arm and a cybernetic leg. And she has two pistols. And this pistol is set up for her to draw from this arm. But this pistol is set up for her to draw from this arm as a cross draw. So does her cybernetic arm not work as well as her real arm? And if no, why does it not have a weapon? And just, having your clips in a purse that you wear over your breasts, it's probably not the most comfortable. But this gun is slung very high. But if it's for a cross draw, that's not bad. It would probably want to roll a little bit more forward for a cross draw. But I do find it funny that her cybernetic arm isn't getting to draw. And these look like clips for a rifle. Okay, so you do have the rifle back. A47. So you got rifle reload. Are there reloads for your pistols? And the only other question I have really, I mean, the model looks great. You're doing really good. So just intellectually or design wise speaking, is there a reason that your cybernetics are here and here? If like an IMD or something went off, you'd probably get affected on one side. I get sort of the balance thing, but in my brain, I now want to know how she lost her arm at one point and her leg at a different point. Also, her hat is wearing really far down on her head. Like that's pulled down to the point where it's like almost covering her ears. So And what that does, if it's being worn that low, is we lose the shape of her head. And it makes her head look sort of short and large because you're not seeing the return of the head. Most people don't wear hats this low at an angle, right? Because you usually want the hat to sit on the crown of your head. So it's usually sitting like this far above your ears. Where's my hat? One sec. Talk about. Oh. 1 second. This is my Let's Not Get Melanoma hat. And this is actually large because I usually wear a piece of fabric over it, my head. But you can see that even this, my head's hitting the crown, right? This is not, I'm not wearing this how most hats should be worn. Normally I would have purchased a smaller hat. Like I said, I have a, like a scarf, like a kava or whatever, you know, so I don't burn my head off. But you can see even here with my head on the crown, it comes down, and I still have a little more room here than you do here, right? That's touching that ear. So, and I know that you have a slightly higher crown than I have, but most people don't wear it because to retain tension of the hat, it's sitting on your crown and it's squeezing on your head, and that's how the hat stays on. So under normal circumstances, your hat's actually going to wear a little higher, right? And that gives that room. And so what we do when we look at the front of her, goes from the front. There we go. Because right, usually eyes are the middle skull. See how the hat, we lose a lot of what's going on as far as the head's going. So the hat is really trimming that head down. And I'm not saying that it doesn't fit inside of it, right? I'm just saying that you're losing the lines of it. And what it does is it makes it look like she has a pinhead because you're not seeing this much of the head. And it makes the jaw look really big because you're not seeing this return of the head. So I think that your hat, right, if we're actually looking at where her head should be, if that makes sense. I think the hat's pulled down really far in the head. But that's my opinion. I mean, that's here or there, really. Because the model's lovely. You know, the sculpt's great. Just a couple little things that got me thinking. Yeah, see here too. If they're going to be separators, I'd have them be very clean and separate as opposed to just looking like scars. But it's a beautiful model. It's a beautiful render. I think it looks great. Here. All right. Hey, man, that hat, you go out in the desert at a festival, I'm a melanoma candidate, man. None of that. Can't be getting too much sun. Important. I'm old and I don't look all wrinkly because I wear that when I leave the house. I don't want to look like a leather bag. The sun is very strong these days. Hello. Okay. So what, did someone else upload a model or what's going on here?
Yep, we've got one more from Mad King.
Did we lose Henry with my hat? He's
No,
like,
you can't
that
hear
was
me?
the last straw. I could take no more.
Can you not hear me?
Yeah, I've been to Burning Man. That's my summer festival hat right there. That's my hat so I can go to Burning Man or other festivals and not come back with melanoma. Nope, I cannot hear you, Henry. And I haven't hit anything. Right. Did you turn your microphone off? Oh,
No, my mic is on.
oh no, that's... Oh! Oh, yeah.
It's because you took your headphones out?
Yeah, I guess this is sort of important.
Yeah.
Oh, there we
You're
go.
helpful.
Guys, you should stop turning your microphone off like that.
Yeah, it's my fault.
It's obviously a problem. Okay.
So did you hear me say that there is one new model by Mad King?
All right.
Cool.
Was this a Z? Hold on.
This is ETL.
Hold on. Gotta get back into my world. Look at that. Everything's back to normal. Weirdness. Perspective turned on. Is he here?
Yep.
Yep, that's fine. No. Okay. First thing. Sculpting. So this is obviously stylized. So, take everything I say for a grain of salt because it's, when it comes to stylized things, what it's supposed to look like. Split mask then. The gray queen of... Okay, so this is for figuring. There are 134 polys on. Okay. Okay. So the first thing I would say, and as you said, you have the whole body for this, so this may be a completely irrelevant statement, but if you have this much facial fat, you would definitely have, you know, more body fat. It wouldn't just come down gathering body fat as well. So, but since you don't have the body here, I can only assume that this head slots onto a body with some fatness. So the other thing that I would say for miniatures, if you have really bulbousy surfaces, you wind up with surfaces that look like they're chatter, because you're only reflecting these high points and it's this big, you know, and so what are you seeing and how? So in something like this, I would go back to thinking about it. You know, I would just make sure that the things are in layers. And actually, you're doing pretty good. But I'm just going. I know you're not symmetric, but here and Will. Just so it's symmetrical. Because I don't want to fight with your non-symmetry. I don't think we need symmetry to show what I'm talking about. If that's okay. Just make sure when you're doing this stuff, that layers are working, right? So let's say you want a, you know, a puffy upper lip that goes down into the small guy upper lip. So we're just going to put a little bit of weight in here just so it's not a flat surface. And then when you put your lip on, you just want to make sure that that lip is definitely in front of the lower lip. And this is where my SK Trim Twist, Sakaki's brush twist, works very well, because what a lot of people start doing, and you're sort of doing it here, but you know, when you take something and you just cut the lines in like this, it disassociates the surfaces. Where if you take SK Twist and you come in here and you are rolling these surfaces, see how it creates that little half round edge? And that allows that to be something that looks a little bit more separated, and it creates like a little bright rolling edge. So when you are going down a very small scale, don't cut lines. Make sure you have layers, because they'll catch light better than they would if they were just lines. And so instead of having super sharp edges, I'd have it be a face there. And then that way, that whole area looks like one reflection face. I mean, I would imagine these a little bit more flat planed first. And then you can come in, fill them in with some weight. But these intersections, like I said, you don't want them to be just cut in. You want them to be. And then when you get small, they show up a lot. And you did a pretty good job. A lot of the stuff isn't just cutting. But if you're thinking of these as planes first, like what plane is in front of the other plane? Just don't cut those lines. Make sure that steps. And make them a little less bulbous on the flat plane than you would think. And what that's going to do for this. Right. This is up and over that. And then the you can see I've yet to cut a line. Doing it. And that way, when it gets smaller, you really can get some nice, clean, reflective. How you determine what's reflective helps dramatic, especially when you have something that's dramatic. Hey, Raytheon. Yeah, you know, sometimes people confuse Shane and I. It's the earrings. We both sound the same. Pretty sure that. But does that make sense? Because if you just have something that's round, all you're getting are circular oval reflection. Where if you're thinking about these things in planes, you can really dictate how light interacts with the surfaces, right? And it's especially when you start getting into, 32 millimeter world or 28 millimeter world, you really can dictate how it is viewed. But you have to remember that when you're dealing with objects that are coming out of the world, you're really sculpting in reflection. And so how do you control how the light works off of that surface that then is going to tell the story you tell? Yeah. Because you can see I'm not making these big half round, giving these things plenty of room for reflection. I'm dictating where I want my light to be. And then I might come back in and, knock these off a little. But honestly, when you're going down that small, I'd probably leave a lot of them. Yeah, without a doubt. It needs to be melodramatic. And that's where something like, let's do this. Turn symmetry off. You know, you're like, oh, completely the wrong brush. Boss. I want it to be big and round. Or and I'm obviously over exaggerating. No. Con. I hate when I forget to turn symmetry off. But you know, we have these beautiful tools now that allow us to do these lovely points that we created before. There we go. Hold down control. Make that a history state. Let's come to the point. Screwed it up. Turn symmetry off. Grab our history brush. Up. Yay, history. So when you get down here, this isn't reflective. It's reflective. But what happens is often when these are just bubbly, you're just getting a singular reflection. And when you start to put things on it that are facets, you get facet changes. See how that's a directional line? Then that's a directional line. Where here, if we roll this around, all we're getting is a singular cylinder sort of reflection. And making things in slight facets can really help your form. You just have to be careful how and what you're painting with. Does that make sense? Oh, goodness gracious. Yo! Did that help at all? I just never. Yeah. Okay. So Henry, what are we talking about until then?
Don't know.
Here we go. Not ready.
I mean, if you're not feeling good, call it. We're out of models.
We're out of models. At some point, we're going to separate critique. Oh no, where are we? What's up? What do you think?
I think Hannibal's going to send in a model,
Okay.
and then maybe call it.
really do feel like I've been kicked in the... This time of season when the weather's changing a lot, it just kills me. Or my allergy. At a 10-minute sneezing fit. That hurts. Yeah. Hurts. Hurts. Volts. Hi. How we doing? Yeah, I mean, feel free to send stuff in. You know, I'll go until we have stuff, but I don't know if I have anything necessarily prepared for sitting around and talking about. Wow, that's awesome. My voice makes people sculpt better. Yeah. And one day my education platform is going to be awesome.
What do you mean one day?
Well, one day it'll just be like a voicing stream of me talking. Right? You know, sculpt better. Sculpt better. Sculpt better.
Just positive affirmations
Sculpt
while they
better.
sculpt their own thing.
Sculpt better. That looks great. Maybe a little more to the left. Yeah. Perfect. That looks great. Right on. Good looking. Good going. Yeah. Watch your pressure. Brush pressure is important. Don't forget your brush pressure. Mesh management is important. Exactly. Don't draw lines. Don't cut into your surface. Think of things in layers, in layers, in layers, in layers, in layers, layers. Yes. See, that would, I definitely have to have a thing that tells me when ZBrush is turned off, and then you're like, what are you doing, slob? You think you're good enough to quit now? I don't think so. Get back on it, slacker. Ooh, that's not how I would have finished out this weekend. You only got 26 hours yesterday? Happy little trees until you turn it off, and then I'm like, what's wrong with you? Get back to it, slobbo. Brachiosaurus. I don't know. Yeah, this was the bowls. I think we need to do these in, and then they can snap onto a bowl. We just need to find a bowl that they can snap on, because these did really.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were really cool. Except you had to have someone who could blow the glass.
Directly into it.
Yeah, and that's very difficult because this isn't a smooth surface, and each one of those little points could cause stress when it's cooling.
Mm-hmm.
But snap-on bowls, they're hysterical. Convert a ring into a bowl. All right. Refresh. Right. Okay, that was our first guy. I'd say you definitely have a better silhouette. Yeah, it's really tough to. I mean, you can smoke out of stainless steel, but people are just weird about smoking out of metal. I mean, like they'll do it for like the little one-hit shots, but if you try to make a metal bowl, like for leaf, people get all crabby. I don't know. Not really my, not my vice. Let's see. Will you send me a big Brachiosaurus stuffed animal?
Sure.
Look at its face. It has a little eyelash. Just a single eyelash.
It only takes one.
That's all you need. Dinosaurs don't need a lot of eyelashes. Who would have known that? No need for Dinolash. All right, let's get back to our references. Did the Brachiosaurus' tails move around that much? Weren't they pretty much like just counterweight?
Yeah, I would bet.
I think. Where's Dave? Armpits. Okay, they're Brachiosaurus. Don't think they're. So going off. So here's my guess. I think that you're probably a little wide. Now, you can always show me a picture and prove me wrong here. Out on a limb and saying I'm in any way, shape, or form correct on that. But if this, I seriously doubt the neck gets that thick that quick. I'm assuming the silhouette of this is going to look a bit more. Because if we just look at weight disbursement and stuff, you're not going to have a lot of distance like between the legs. If you have something that weighs that much, it's going to try to be, you know, the weight of the body should probably try to be up and over the legs. So if your legs are sticking on the outside of the torso, it's going to be trickier to move around and stuff if all the weight is, you know, dispersed in between the legs as opposed to down on the leg. So I think you probably want to bring them in just a touch so the weight is over the leg. Probably pretty consistent. And then my guess is, and once again, you can, don't look at illustrations, try to look at anatomy things, because people draw things that don't make much sense. And as I said, I could be wrong. But for some reason in my head, I have it on no authority that that tail is probably going to be fairly rigid and be a counterbalance. Even though Homie got a really long neck, these short tails. Didn't most of these guys really long?
I thought it was wicked long.
This little drawing. I mean, to be fair, that 9 meters of that 26. So if we're looking at the breakup, right? "51 is too strong." Littlefoot had a long tail. There you go. That one had an eyelash. But I don't know if reptiles are really. Earth. I'm gonna make guesses. That's a little bit more on silhouette. So I would just make sure you're looking at your reference material, because when you're doing things that are real, it's important that, well, if you want them to look real. See, that's always the joy of stylization. Oh, I want it could be a thick neck. I'm doing a stuffed animal, not a real one. Okay. Yeah, I would say probably bring its legs up under itself a little bit more. Get that tail out. I don't think it's really like a snake tail. I think it's really more like a rigid counterbalance than something that's very active and shapy. Oh, someone had questions. Here to help. Yeah. I would just look a little bit more at your reference, see where that goes. Any questions on that?
Cheers. Mad King uploaded a new file, though I believe it has the exact same name as the last file. So maybe
Thanks.
it's the rest of the body.
Thanks for making it easy there, buddy. I appreciate like not trying to commute. I don't know. I have them on my space mount. There's top view, side view. Boop. 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 Boop.
Oh, now there's a bunch of files.
Thanks, guys. Wait till I download them and then upload everything. You guys are killing me. Killing me.
You can ignore Mad King face.
King Leaf. That's a Mad King Leaf if I've ever seen one. All right. Well, what to say? First of all, sculpt. Stand. So tell me about Mad King Leaf. Well, I mean, what were you? Is it just an abstract format of a leaf that you're trying to get done? Was there something specific that you were shooting for here? Because depending on what you talk about. Oh, all right. Well, the first thing I would say, even if you're dealing with an abstraction, a little flatter. Like, even if you're dealing with an abstraction, I would kind of think about how a leaf works and then how I'm trying to abstract it, right? So, you know, a leaf, usually the thinnest part is up the center. You know, usually the thinnest. See, I'm falling apart over here. The thinnest part is up the center, and then you sort of have, ridges. So the only thing I would say here is you had a couple different styles of things, right? You have these loops here, you have this wavy on the bottom. This is sort of a big wave, these are sort of vertebrae looking, and these are waves. So as far as an abstracted leaf, I think that you got sort of overly excited with your abstraction, and you could have made it a little bit more leaf-like. Once again, take what I'm saying for a grain of salt with abstractions, you know, because anytime you're abstracting something, anytime you're, you know, that's so opinion driven that what I'm telling you could be whatever. It can be nonsense because you're like, well, that's what I wanted, and each one of these means this, this, and this, and I'll be like, fine. So let's just start here. So we have this shape kind of doing this, and that's sort of our center division of a leaf, right? And I'm just taking this as an abstraction. Okay. So then we're breaking down into sort of this vertebrae thing. So that is going to be the center of my leaf right now. I'm going to turn this up a little so we can quicker. So now we've established sort of this vertebrae pattern. So the vertebrae is our stem. So then we can decide if we want to continue the vertebrae all the way up the center. Not sure what we're doing with that yet, so I'm not going to. I come in here, and this is my exterior silhouette that I want. Okay, so I spent my time. This is external silhouette that I want. But we have this scoop and this under thing. Well, you got to remember that leaves are sort of fractal, Mandelbrot-y things. So usually what you have is a pattern, and then that pattern works, right? So we're going to come in here and that pattern, come in, and using this shape as our base foundation, come in, and I'm going to do something with that on each of these, because leaves, you know, sort of fractally generate. And then, so the key to abstraction is developing a vocabulary, a visual vocabulary of that abstraction. So I've just picked these shapes to kind of carry through. We have this going on the center. So now I want this shape to be those little scoops, right? You had these sort of things going on. But if you've decided to have those there, then you want to figure out how to have them here, here, here. And you can see that you're now starting to get a mapping of something that's a repeating form. So now, right, we have this. So I want actually this to look like a part of this coming. So that's my center stem. So this one has a center stem. That and the right. So just remember that successful abstraction comes from literal abstraction, right? You're taking a form and you're trying to interpret it into a different format. So if you have something that has a repeating form, well, then think about it with those repeating forms. And like I said, this is not necessarily the solution to this, just something. Right, so I would approach the abstraction in a way that you can start to develop the rhythms and patterns that define the form that you're abstracting. So I think that's where I would probably. If you're trying to tell leaf story, if that makes sense. But yeah, but you know, I'm not saying that this isn't perfectly, you know, acceptable in that concept. I just think you have two issues here. I think that these things make no sense to me stylistically. And then you have this big, very melodramatic bar. So instead of these guys, I mean, they're sitting right where that big melodramatic bar is. So maybe you repeat the melodramatic bar as a flat, and that becomes, you know, the form that you're repeating. I would just try to determine the visual vocabulary and tell a story about it. You know, this is, you know, a lamb chop leaf. So these are the bones coming out of the lamb shank, and then they have your little forms, you know, and then you have spaghetti connecting them. Oh, spaghetti connecting, right? You know, whatever it is with the. Yeah, I think this is a little deep. Your original one's a little deep, only because, especially for wearability, you had here. Let's go all the way to the beginning. Right, see these points like right here. That just is going to hurt someone, you know, and you know it's 18 mil tall, but almost 4.5 mil thick. And for something that small, that's inordinately thick. And your metal prices are going to be brutal if you actually make it, you know, wearable, you know, a centimeter and a half or so. So it's, so, you know, I'm not saying this wrong. I'm just saying I think you need to, you know, you have a handful of very specific vocabularies here. And so I would say just rearrange, you know, pick something, pick a theme and go with it. Right. Because you're not far off. I just think cohesion, you need a little design. Any questions on? Lose you there, Matt? Oh, okay. Woo-hoo. All right. So next we have Hey, Hannibal. Yeah, they are. Is this the actual person? The face looks very similar. Interesting. Did they pump her up for this this picture, or did they just envision her as a superhero? Is definitely the all that. Interesting. Here, now, it's interesting. All right. Yeah, see, once again, this comes into that world of illustrators being able to get away with things. Because they even have her shoulders wider. Yeah, that's crazy. So I'm gonna say that's a little crazy. And here's why that's a little crazy. Because once again, no matter how bulked out you get, your rib cage is going to stay the same. And you have her rib cage pushed in here. So, if we're looking at her rib cage, look at where her shoulders are. And, your shoulder bones are actually up in here. No matter how bulky you get, you can't make this distance, from the rib cage to the shoulder bone farther out. So what you have is an illustration, right? And that's the issue, that they've made it really blown out because of, the image. But when it comes to physicality or the physical world, what you have, and this is very common with, super muscular images, is that the arms never attach to the torso. And so really, these need to be in here, which everything. Your biceps are going good. That's probably closer to where things are going to be. Breath. Move. Going on. The intensity. Hate it when my brushes don't work how they're supposed to. What have you done? Right, because your pec's not going to change, right? Pec muscle comes over there, comes up under here, right? Mm. 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 So that's actually your pectoral. And then this fat back. But this pec is shaped. You know, a male pec and a female pec's the same muscle. You just have the fatty bodies there. And like, you know, this is totally out. Yeah, so I think getting how it works on this one. Say that understand. So we're just gonna do it here because it'll actually work here. Right. So your pec muscle's still doing the same thing. Right. And then you get your little fat mass going on. So these can spread, you know, it depends on what your fat's like. So, and these look weird because be right. So if you get like a skeleton and just throw the rib cage in there, you'll see that, you know, the rib cage kind of has to be there. When you're dealing with this much body, just get pecs in there first. Get them where they should be. Your clavicles, you know, and then you can worry about the breast. Um, but I think that just by dealing with them as pecs is going to help you visualize where they sit and because that's pretty good. Now, where the bulk comes is instead of moving the interior, you know, the bulk comes from these muscles, if that makes any sense. Right? It's not moving out, these just get more and more bulbous. So if we look at, we last Right, if we're looking at right, you know, the rib cage is where the rib cage is, right?
Tends to be.
And so this intersection is actually, you know, this point is pointing to that. This literally is just massive bulk, right? But you see how the pecs don't spread out and those deltoids don't actually spread out, right? Look at how cramped this is. You know, this is 4 pumpkins hanging around this guy's neck. But they're not out here, right? That bicep's hiding that. Right, this part here doesn't spread, right? If you look at, you know, his torso box, it didn't get any bigger. This bone is still connecting, you know, right there and right there. It's just, I like it. Oh, that's really funny. Look at how much, like, you're getting no cut. That's off there. Like, he actually. Right, these aren't spreading out here. And where I see a lot of, you know, you guys get this stuff really nice, but you just slide it out this way just too much. This is all compressed in on. You see what I mean? That guy will never be able to put on a t-shirt. He can't touch the back of his thread. Right? You're not really moving off of that torso. A lot of muscle. So, what all that comes back to is you can hang the first pumpkin here. And then you can hang the second pumpkin here. But that width is just coming from bulk. It's not moving farther out. And we're obviously being, but we're in that illustration. It was obviously an illustration. You see what they've done? Okay. They moved it just, and it just spreads it. And it looks like a really interesting. Does that make sense? I would just say, think about anatomically where some of that, because that shoulder is not sitting on it. So whatever, if it's going to spread to that extreme, it's going to be this stuff bulking, not moving. because that muscle has to connect it. Right. So I think you're pretty darn close. I think you just need to slide that in. And you can see how you've, if this is, well, you can see where the rib cage is. And that this really allows. Right, and you can get that bulk, but that bulk has to be muscle bulk. You just have it moving. So coming in and slapping a skeleton on things often happens. You see how high your clavicles are. Which makes yeah. Hello to India. Does that make sense? I think slapping a skeleton on often helps. Did we lose Hannibal?
Mm. Doubt it.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of goes. Because the face, the representation looks good. You know, it's just. And what's funny is if you look at where the skull is actually sitting here, I think the skeleton's still even smaller. Because those eyeballs should be lower part. But that lowers the clavicles and stuff again. Ugh. Okay. Was there someone else?
There's, I mean, they're just going to keep coming in. So 4 more now.
Yeah, it's funny if that picture of her is actually her and then them muscling her up because she's not carrying that much muscle weight. Don't do. Is it really only 10:30?
Yep.
Which one's first? This one?
Ashish, either 3.
All right. Well, face study. Looks great. Your lips are really. Your hair is really. Is this one of the hair brushes? Because these are really flat. Is he here?
I have to assume so, but I haven't seen them say that this is their piece.
I'm just really interested in how he. Because this looks like it could be one of those shaped brushes, you know? Because. Funny because. You know, this is. At this resolution, right? It doesn't have a higher resolution, which means I wonder what did these. Because see, like here, this looks like it's a pre-shaped brush, right?
Mm-hmm.
And see, these could be that same pre-shaped brush. Oh. Yeah, okay. So they did try to make their own brush. I'm assuming Ghost is you. Wee bit of an Adam's apple. Because that's a great hairbrush. It looks really good. Your lips, your face, your eyes are looking really good. Eyelashes, nice. The inner ear is a little lumpy. You may have an Adam's apple. But your hairbrush rocks. Right? Exactly. No, that's a really good hairbrush. It's interesting. How you're getting separate hairs here. The hair looks great. You did a good job. Do my major pet peeve where you have them all laying on top of one another. Ugh. Yeah, normally this is a little bit more of a scoop. Once again, you know, you can find examples that do everything. This kind of because that works as a fun one. But your face is very, it's not, it is an Adam's apple, but beyond that, it's actually just, it's even. Even if it is male having the Adam's apple, probably not going to, you very rarely get something that but the hair is killer. That brush is awesome because it resolves a lot of issues that I see people have with hair. Ash, a good one. I'm assuming for rendering, but just remember for figures or figurines or anything 3-dimensional, you do probably want to put a scoop in. But since you have the multiple eyeballs, I'm taking it for granted that one is. So they're just looking at. If you plan to print it, put something in there. So you'll get. Well, measurements of the faces are pretty universal. It's you know, you have the oval, eyes are halfway, nose is half, lips are half, pupils come to the end of the mouth. You know, I mean, it's a pretty universal measurement. Your mouth is So from the side, you'll notice that this is something that people, nose, lips, and mouth are often a single line. Whale, depending on how big you want to print it. And if you do want to print it, I would have them touch, right? If you're going to print them, you don't want these just hanging out there. You do want them to find these points where they'll intersect and touch. Right, you'll want them to touch someplace, just so there's and like that one can touch somewhere else. You know, you can get them to where they're just slight contact points, but somewhere along the way, you're going to want them to tap and touch if you want to print them, because yeah, if they're all just connected up here, well, one, when the print, they'll just sort of lie flat, but two, they'll just snap right off. If you have that much air play in them, remember, supporting it in a specific direction becomes incredibly important. And you may want to go ahead and, like, let's say you have these sort of things, you may want to run these, like, after you've got it to where you want it, you may want to take and plate, make a little ball on the end, and then, you know, with Sculptris Pro and Snake Hook, drag it down and have it touch someplace, you know, where you're controlling where these things are touching on the body. And then that way, you're not going to need a ton of support on these things. And then all you do is come back and snip it right there, and then just snick it right there. And then you have a lot more control over how they, hey, Cena, you got it. But everybody would love to see that. Is this just an alpha brush? Is that how you did it? You create it like a triangle with lumps in it, so it drags out and tapers? Yeah, you know, like in here, you know, just have these, just touch every once in a while. And that'll make them a much more solid structure. Don't have them interlock, you know, don't have them cross into each other, just have. Yeah, Anatomy for Sculptors is a really good book series, and I contacted them and we got discount codes for you guys. I don't get a percentage of that. It's a book I like, and so when I reached out to them, they were like, yeah. There's also Visible Anatomy. I really like this one. How come I can never find it in the list? It doesn't.
Because that's a crazy way to look for software.
Well, how would you look?
I'd press the Windows key on my keyboard and I'd type visible and it would just show up.
Windows key. I would push a button. I'm a very big fan of this, because it breaks down everything. It's really cool because it gives you muscle actions. So like they have like these little animations of what muscles are actually making horizontal adduction, so you know that it's the pec muscle in this top deltoid that are bringing that around, and they're sort of showing you how it works. But the really nice part of this is like you get into system muscular. You can really break it up into the muscles that are doing specific things, but you also have the full body here. And what's nice about this is that you can tap on this and you can hide it so you can see what's going on underneath. And right, let's deltoid. And you can see that the bicep is here. Right, so, this gives you a really good breakdown of the muscles, how they work, how they sit over one another. And what's nice about this is that it actually has, you can set up tests. And so you'll run through and you have to name the muscles and stuff. So if you really want to learn anatomy, this is a great program. And I think they have a monthly rental now, but they also have an iPhone app. And then, but just the fact that you can test yourself on it, it's pretty cool. Yeah, this is a great thing. Ish good. But the sculpting for anatomy for sculptors, what makes it so nice is that they're not talking about like it's not an anatomy test. It really, hold on. I think these two are really good together, because this one isn't really trying to teach you anatomy. It's trying to show you how the muscles show up as surface features, right? And so they're breaking up what the muscles do, and they're showing you how they work as features, as surface features. So it's not really about all the muscles that are in there. It's just these muscles are doing this, and that's what makes this look like this. So I think that's the feature. Yeah, here. And see, what's nice about these is, unlike, so Bridgman, he obviously looked at a lot of Bridgman. And what's interesting about his is that, so they start with actual photographs. So it's not fake anatomy. It's not just someone drawing anatomy, but it's showing you features, right? So this is classical sculpture, how they interpret anatomy. This is fitness, and then this is skinless, right? So they're showing you what's happening. But these are the things, it's just silly things like this, right? This is not how muscles work. They have this rhythm. This is how it's blocked out. This is how it shows up. Like, they'll show you, this is how your serratius come in. This is how your pecs sit over your serratus. This is how your lat lays over the serratus. So, and then they build it up. But once again, most of these are actually from, right? What they do is they take an actual photograph, and they're showing you this, because what they're showing you is, see, this pink part is the bone, and that shows right here. And so they're showing you how the anatomy looks. How does the surface structure look and work, right? And just silly things like, this is the profile of your clavicle depending on your muscle thicknesses, right? And how does that look? How does the armpit work, right? See, and it's nice because, see, once again, it's a pec muscle, and then the fatty tissue is under it. But this is a pec muscle. So you just have to remember that female breasts sit on top of the pec muscle, right? And so, it just goes through and it shows you how these surface structures work and how they look, as opposed to it being, oh, it's this muscle, it's this muscle, it's this muscle. I think if you're trying to study anatomy for sculpting, I think these two are invaluable. All right.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan. Yep, sorry, it's not Shane, it's me. Yeah, so great hairbrush. It looks good. It's funny, I just used your skeleton. Well, once again, I think this really just comes down to a lot of, reference material again, right? And so once you, and like that's where I'd probably send you at this point. And that is, you really need to kind of understand what's going on just anatomically speaking. Because, just like we were saying, this is a pec muscle. This is actually fatty tissue that is under the pec muscle. Your rib cage looks pretty good. Your left ear, so you see those from behind. So your waist is a little bizarro because you don't have a lot of the stuff that's there. So I think in this case you really are needing to just go back to your anatomy reference and kind of start there. Because your torso, it looks like your torso doesn't belong to your leg. Torso's a third smaller than your hips and legs. So I would just strongly suggest going straight back and making sure that your base proportion is correct, and then start working on. I think you're. See, this is where I think like anatomy for sculptors is helpful. Because there's just some stuff that's going on that, it's hard to go into correcting these things unless we're going to spend a lot of time on them, right? If that makes any sense. And I don't necessarily want to go into muscle exactitude, if that makes any sense. Because, there's just some stuff down here that isn't quite happening that way. Yet again, I think this is where a lot of people really get confused with female anatomy, and especially the breast stuff, is that they don't know where to start and stop the weight of the breast or the fatty tissue of the breast. And they get confused in the sense of, once again, you have a pec, and then you have this that is the fatty tissue attached to the pec. And did I shut? Audible books. Well, once you know the little yeah, I would say start with a good reference material when you're doing this kind of stuff because we can sit and talk about it, but it really it helps when you start with just something where you can learn about the forms and shapes a little bit more than me saying, oh, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. I would far rather you come and look at something like this where you're going, okay, so right, this gives you a pretty good breakdown of what's happening, right? You can see that that's just a standard pec muscle. It's not like a dramatically different thing. You just start to have the fat bodies on it. So, this is where if you're going to do something that's an anatomical study, I would find good anatomical references. And that's not just a picture of someone, right? That's actually the anatomy references. And it's funny because Ryan is a very, very, very strong anatomy sculptor. And I would hope that he'd say similar things. And that is, it's much harder to just take this and try to figure out what the muscles are happening. Where if you have something that actually is showing you where the muscles are going, and you can see that this is based, why I like this book as a easy way to study is it's actually, they use the picture and actually lay it over the picture, right? So you're getting a pretty concise breakdown, and it's color broken down, so it's easier to look at and see. So I would just say, I think the problem with your anatomy is that your references aren't, if that makes sense. So I would suggest instead of going through and nitpicking the anatomy that you created, that you go back in and get a good anatomical reference. And then you have something that you can start to learn from, understand, and, because I mean, it's not horrible by any means. I just think that there are a handful of things that, you don't understand what's going on. And so you're putting lines in where you're seeing surface lines and you're not understanding the muscle structure. So I would come back to this, find an anatomical reference book or like the things we've put up for you, and then actually try to understand what's going on. Because until you understand what's happening, it becomes difficult to even talk about it. That makes sense. Like YouTube. But I think studying the right thing is important, if that makes any sense. Where, because if there is if there's just something that's a picture of someone, unless you understand what's happening under that skin and fatty tissue, you're never, like, if you don't understand that the bicep goes up and connects under the deltoid, and everyone just, runs it straight up instead of crossing it into the armpit, you'll never do armpits right. So, I think that getting some real muscular information is incredibly important when you're doing the study stuff. Nah, we'll be fine. It's a very Did you start with the skeleton or did you just start with muscles? It looks. I will almost always just start with squares and Z modeler. That's my pretty standard process of starting to. How do I muscles? Oh, right. That's answering my question for earlier. Yeah, you know, this is a good block out. It's a good beginning reference. But once again, I would go, you know, when you're doing, I mean, here's Ryan was here earlier, but this is with ZBrush, right? This is one of their models. And this is his. And I mean, he's a masterful anatomy sculptor. I mean, he really, he's an impressive anatomy sculptor. And what's nice, you can see here, I think this is always a good reference if you're trying to do something like, because once again, Ryan's anatomy's right, you know. And here, because he did it all in layers, here again, you can see here. Right, you know, if you're looking at it, right, it's a pec muscle that then leads into abdominal muscles, right? So female pecs don't act differently than male pecs when it comes to what that base muscle is doing and stuff, right? So yeah, no, when I'm doing anatomy, for what I've been doing recently, my anatomy has gone to hell because I very rarely I'm dealing with things that are like 4 millimeters. I don't get into detail much. It's funny that I'm critiquing anatomy so much now because my anatomy is no longer very strong as what it used to be. But I would say that this comes in ZBrush. Ryan's model does. And if you ever need reference when you're doing this, his model is great reference because everything's done on separate layers. You can go through the layers. Everything is layered or named. The layers are named so you can see what's going on. And like I said, his anatomy is very tight. Right. So I would say if you have no other reference, use Ryan's. And because like I said, his anatomy is. And I'm not just saying that. Let's go. What do we have here? Oh, it's just an anatomy. All right. Is that everything?
There is one left. Nick Ecrochet, if I pronounce that right.
Was that not this? That was this guy.
Okay.
And I was saying, you know, especially for an Ecrochet, first of all, I would have started with a skeleton, right? Because technically, this is an Ecrochet, right? It's the exposure. So what I would do, Nick, is this comes in your version if you go into tools. See how it says Ryan Kingsling right here? That's this model. And this is a very good Ecrochet. So I would base it on his, right? Because this is a beautiful example of an Ecrochet. And also, like I said, the visible body Human Atlas of Human Anatomy is a really good reference for this kind of stuff, and Anatomy for Sculptors. Because I mean, you know, I'm not just trying to blow you off. I'm not, saying, oh well, but I mean, it just comes down to you. If you're doing an crochet, it's really about figuring out the musculature. So I would have started with a skeleton, right? And then learn, because those were the classical anatomy. That's how you learned anatomy and sculpture. You would sculpt one. Now you can do it layer by layer, and that's awesome. And with a sample like Ryan has his sample here, and then in the visible body, in the visible body, opening them like visible body. And these are just references that I use. I'm not, I got accused of being a shill. And yeah, I get nothing from people. They're just the tools I use. But this is the beginning of what you want. And like I said, you can come in here. It gives you the name. You can just hide it so you can see behind it, or fade it so you can see behind it. You can hide it, and it shows you where your insertions and origins are. Now, there is another one of these that comes in the membership that it literally lists the insertions and origins, right? Like here, say this is the pectoral minor. And it'll actually give you the insertions and origins. And like I said, what's nice about this, if you're actually trying to learn anatomy, what's nice about this is that you can make quizzes. So let's back out here. Quizzes. I want a quiz on muscular systems. Let's look at eye expression quizzes and see it's like select the right or left occipital frontalis cranius. And it'll give me 3 tries. So what is that? Occipital. Guess it's this. There are only 3 muscles there. Hey, there we go. So, you can actually set up quizzes, go next, it'll grade you. But, this is a really great thing if you're actually trying to learn, right? Yeah, I like their stuff a lot. Well, this, I guess they actually use this for college programs because they have the see, I keep closing it. They have the physiology as well. So it's a real teaching tool. I mean, there are schools that use it. So it's real. It's not this. So yeah, I wasn't like trying to rip on your work or not give it enough time to talk about it. I just think that if you say that you're doing crochet, what you're telling me is you're trying to learn anatomy, right? I mean, that's a very specific sculpt. It's a very specific reason to have that sculpt. And that is to flex your anatomy. And so I just think this might be the wrong place to start for that. Tight.
I
Tight. All right. Oh, we have Andre. Snuck one in.
a ZPR.
Oh, luckily, it's the last one. So, Andre, ZTLs. Because when you make me open a ZPR, you're making me enter your world, and that. And also, it's much easier to track of stuff when we're bringing it in, and I can control the environment. You did a really good job on the hair. You've had some good hair tonight. I love how huge your rope belt is. And your kimono's sort of big, thick. You're using it to really alter the silk part. Wrinkles, your stylization is very consistent. You know, like you put a seam here to imply texture. You put it here as well. You're nice. The thickness difference of this material, like your legs, your sock booty things, and your arm booty things. You're really selling a difference of thickness in the textures, as well as good wrinkles. The stylized anatomy stays consistent. Like nothing is more realistic than the other part. Like the hands are super realistic, but you know, you've stylized the anatomy of the torso. Actually, I think it's a very overall successful piece. Pretty awesome. The only thing I could say, and I mean, this is just once again lovely, lovely, lovely models. Whole lot to say is when these are going over your curves, don't let them get lost. I think SK Twist really allows you to control some of that up and over when they're coming over. Curves you just a little soft, and that retains that. It allows that to appear. Don't let them stop. Take them all the way to the big in style. may see this is where stylization goes. You may just want a little bit more thickness in the hips because you know, you gotta think that you have your hip bone and the legs actually connect up. So these are just at a slightly less dynamic, if that makes, you know, these are connecting here, right? So I think that just by taking and just giving him symmetry. A bit of a touch. Because these aren't meeting in the middle. If you see anything there, right, you get a little gap there. And if you see anything, it's the buttocks filling it up, right? Because that's crossing over. So instead of it being your legs are coming to a point, that's going up inside. And then the buttocks is filling that. And that's what gives you that, if that makes sense. And that is straighting touch brings that hip socket ankle out more. But you can't see it under all of that, but it just felt like the legs are going in at a pretty steep angle. Right, because see, this is an angle and then your legs are straight here. You see what I'm saying? But you're at your ankles. So it feel your leg bows at the knee, right? You got this, and then but then it's really straight right here. Could say, let's do this. And I'm doing this very quickly. Right, because if you're in horse stance, your leg does of the thigh or the shin, right? So not you see what I mean? And that only became obvious because we were out here. See how all this feels like it's going straight up and if this is straight up and down, your hips are out here. You have much wider hips. Have something that, and then there's a do you see how even having a slight angle in it leads you back to the hips, where this feels like it's just not here? It's pretty subtle, but I think it's fairly important. You're not your rope knot succeeded. Yep. Looks awesome. Thank you for sharing. Whose was this? Was this person here? Henry?
I couldn't tell you. They haven't admitted it yet.
Haven't admitted it. No, it's a beautiful model. Looks great. I do like that you kept your stylizations, you know, pretty tight. Do you see that subtle implication in the leg tilt? It becomes when this is your first model? Jesus. Yeah. Killing it. It looks great. No, it's well, doubting the details good. It makes you think about them. But a lot of times it's just, when you started working on something, you get focused on things that you think are wrong or things that need attention. And the leg thing is very subtle. But I'm holding my whole hand over the screen. You can't really tell what I'm. But I think that that should be pretty obvious that that's pointing at the hip, and that one's not, because you bent the leg to make that straight. But looks awesome. I mean, the stylization's nice. Your anatomy's good. The stylized anatomy is good, because it's the same vocabulary. And yeah, no, it's totally it's obvious what it is, and it's done well. Yeah, I wouldn't, worrying about every detail is what makes you good, You killed it, my friend. It looks. Yeah, no, the face looks great. I mean, it's a stylized cartoon face, and it looks like the character. So I would say that, yeah, very successful. I mean, your depths are correct. And I would say that you've actually made it, this is slightly more realistic than the character style. And so I think you made a really good translation between more realistic and, the anime versus a physical object. And they're still slightly more cartoony. Naruto's a slightly more cartoony shapes. It's not trying to be realistic. Where you've taken that and brought it one step in and made it more realistic. I think you did a great job of retaining the stylization, yet bringing more realistic anatomy. So, yeah, no. It's nice. Actually, it's lovely. It's a very nice model. Very nice job. Not to go into it too much again, because we literally just was talking about a bunch of and a bunch of Jesus.
Anatomy?
Yeah, the anatomy references. We post those two things. Sorry, Rashab. We literally like 8 minutes ago we just went through a bunch of the stuff. So, yeah, no, he looks great. Absolutely looks great. If you do animate him, show us that too, because I'd love to see it. Because if you put enough care, as much care in your animation as you did in the part, I think it'll be. Yeah, visible body, I think, is probably one of the better ways to learn anatomy by yourself, you know, because it's all there. You can quiz yourself, and well, that link, I think, is probably the best way to start learning anatomy. I really do. Because you can go through it, and they actually have the ones like on the yeah, the clavicle bone is a little straight here, but I think that I don't know that it doesn't really bother me, because you're dealing with, once again, a very stylized character. And so, you know, yeah, guess what? Deltoids aren't that flat. But you're dealing with an anime that doesn't have a lot of real anatomy, but it is a very sharp edged anime. Like, I think the characters, especially his character, you know, there's a lot of very sharp, just it's black spiky edges and stuff. So I don't think that he's really out of character with the anime. And that's the thing, balancing an anime and then trying to make a physical object that's somewhat realistic, because you don't want it to be too realistic, right? You want it to retain stylization. Say Sasuke. Oh no, Suki. Okay. See, I was close. Hey, for an old man, I was pretty close. You see, it's not really, it's not very anatomically correct. I mean, the anime isn't about anatomy, right? You know, it's not. And so if you're looking at, you know, it's when I say it's a sharp edged anime, it's like it's not very loopy, it's not flowy, it's a pretty crisp anime style. And so I think that doing something in that vein where, you know, you're straightening things out, you know, that doesn't bother me. As far as, that's why when we talk about anatomy and it's stylized, I'm like, well, you know, as far as now how to make him yeah, you know, I've come a long way. Yeah, I don't know that Shane stays up this late. So, and this is where I talk about, you know, the stylization. It's really about the character at this point, and especially something like this, which is a very well known character. If I know the character, it's a very well known character. Yeah, no, I think you did a good job. It looks great. And it's also in, you know, an A pose. So the second he starts getting in there, moving it around, you know, all of that'll change. Yeah, as far as making it low poly and getting it ready for animation, I'm not the person to ask. If you want to make this a print, I can show you how to deal with the geometry for that. But as far as retopologizing for animation, games or stuff, that's really not my thing. I'm a manufacturer, not an animator. Okay.
All right. Yep. That's all the files.
Okay. And I'm going to crash a little early today because my allergy is killing me and got a raging. I'm already sort of dopey. All right. I will see everyone next week. Thank you for participating. Some lovely stuff. Hopefully that was helpful. Sign up for the sculpt off for the summit. And get ready for the summit. Super excited. And buy ZBrush. Go to ZBrush Jewelry Workshop and join our community. We have obviously a free Discord community. And then, yeah. Am I forgetting anything? Oh, yes.
I can subscribe.
YouTube people. Push subscribe. See, I almost got there. Hit subscribe. Hit like if you like what you're seeing. If you have any questions, put them in the question bar below, and either I or someone who actually knows the answer will answer that. Hit the little bell if you want notifications when we come on. Thanks for joining us. And am I forgetting anything?
We'll see you next Monday.
Yeah. And just tell everyone how much you love me, Shane Olson. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a great one.